Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ignite the Spark in Buyer Relationships, Best-in-Class Tactics for Adding Context to Your Content Messaging. I'm Claudia Tirico, Features Editor at Demand Gen Report, and I'll be your moderator for this presentation. This session is part of our week-long strategy and planning series, where we're covering the emerging challenges and opportunities modern marketers face as they gear up for the year ahead. It's our hope that this 12-part series spotlighting a range of marketing planning topics will offer you practical tips and strategies to get your teams ready for 2017. Be sure to check out the rest of the webinars in the series, either in real time or on demand. I also want to encourage you to follow along and share your thoughts and feedback on social media during today's webinar using the hashtag SPS16. You can connect with us using the @DG_report Twitter handle or reach out to me directly. My Twitter handle is @Claudia Tirico, and our speakers are reachable via the @ContentForDemand, @Dana Harder, and @Alicia Fiorletta Twitter handles. For those of you who may be new to Demand Gen Report, here's a quick overview. We are an online media company publishing daily news, a weekly email newsletter, special reports, original research, and a rich menu of additional resources. In addition, we produce the annual Content to Conversion Conference and Demand Gen Summit taking place this upcoming February in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Demand Gen Report today and join more than 40,000 subscribers to receive our newsletter and other quality content. For today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. During the presentation, you can access all the information you need from the platform toolbar. We encourage you to ask our presenter questions. To do so, simply click the Q&A widget at the top right corner of the screen. Today's session is being recorded, and all attendees will receive an archived link to the presentation to go back and review or share with colleagues. Before I introduce our featured speakers, a few housekeeping notes. Today's presentation is slated to run about 20 to 30 minutes, with 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A following the presentation. Be sure to submit your questions using the Q&A widget in the On24 console. In addition to joining the conversation online and submitting your questions here, we also encourage you to tell us how we're doing. It's important for us to improve the value we provide our audience members, so we've put together a brief survey that will automatically launch once this webinar session ends. You can also access the survey at any time during this webinar by clicking on the survey icon in the taskbar on the bottom of your screen. Before signing off today, please take a moment to complete the survey. Doing so will help us to better serve you, and it can increase your chances to win some of our SPS16 prize pack, which we'll get to next. So this is really exciting. As a registered attendee, you've already been entered into our hashtag SPS16 prize pack giveaway. After each webinar, we'll give away one free pass to our upcoming B2B Marketing Exchange in February 2017, which includes our 6th annual Content to Conversion Conference, the Demand Gen Summit, and 2 brand new tracks, ABM in Action Live and the Sales Connection Summit. We'll also be giving away a $25 Amazon gift card for each day of the series, a total of 5 prizes. And finally, one grand prize winner will win an Amazon Echo. We've created some easy ways for you to increase your odds of winning. Additional entries can be earned by sharing on social. Just share the link to register and use the hashtag SPS16. Referring a colleague. We've created a field on our registration pages for them to mention your referral so you can receive the credit. Or by submitting questions for today's speakers and answering our interactive poll questions through the webinars. Finally, you could take our post-webinar survey, which you can access by clicking on the survey icon on the bottom of your screen at any time. And finally, Attending all the SPS 16 sessions live will give you a bonus boost, doubling all your entry points. Speaking of participation, before we get started, I wanted to ask the audience a quick poll question. You guys ready? How do you currently build your messaging for content and campaigns? You can choose, we focus on our new product releases and their features/capabilities. We focus on our brand's core value propositions. We focus on the needs of our target buyers, or all of the above. Go ahead and make your selection and click the Submit button right on your screen at the bottom right. Thanks, everyone. Now I'm pleased to introduce our featured speakers for today, Dana Harder and Alicia Esposito. Dana is a passionate content strategist, marketer extraordinaire, results-driven, coffee addict, shoe hoarder, yoga devotee, purple or pink hair depending on the week. Alicia is a content strategist for Content for Demand. In addition to writing for and managing the C4D blog, she helps clients identify new content marketing ideas and experiment with innovative formats. Alicia is a fan of all things digital and interactive and uses the art of ideation to help clients see the content marketing possibilities. She also helps the G3 Communications family of brands plan and execute killer events and ramp up their cross-channel marketing results. When she's not dwelling over all things branding, messaging, and content strategy, she's spending quality time with her nieces and nephews, binging on Netflix, or eating guacamole. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to you, Alicia.
Thanks so much, Claudia, for the great introduction. Dana and I are really excited to be here today to tell you all about what's happening right now in the B2B space, what's happening in our relationships with buyers today. And frankly, there's a big problem. Of course, we know that basically everyone's doing content marketing today, and as a result, there's more content than ever before. This has created a bit of a too many fish syndrome. Although we may feel like we're big, valuable fish in our buyers' lives, most of the time our buyers feel like we're just too many annoying guppies. There's a plethora of Me Too offerings, one-size-fits-all messaging, and as a result, buyers feel overwhelmed, they feel inundated, and worst of all, they feel like they're not getting what they need. This has led to what we call content burnout. Too many options, too many devices, too many resources. Everything's starting to blend together, and it's making buyers' lives worse. And of course, our goals as marketers is to make their lives better, right? We want to give them valuable insights, research. We want to create great experiences. So today, we really want to talk about how marketers can find new ways to get more personal with their buyers, because like someone who's immersed in the modern dating pool, we're starting to get a little jaded. Come on now, we all have been there. Whether you were in the old school days of dating or whether you're immersed in new dating apps, most of our dates have fallen into two categories. As you'll see on the left, there may have been times when you were a little bit bored. You felt like there wasn't really that spark, that connection. Every time you talked about something, you felt like you were talking to a wall, or vice versa. Other times, you felt like you were actively engaging with someone. You felt like you were being heard. You wanted to hear them. It was an active, ongoing exchange. That's when the warm, fuzzy feelings happen. That's where we get excited. We're invigorated, and we can truly build relationships. So today, we're going to show you how to get to that point using contextual messaging, by creating more immersive content experiences, by creating more conversational content, and of course, at the end of the day, how you can use insights from these content campaigns and content experiences to better understand your buyers and what they want, what they need, At the end of the day, that's going to help you make smarter decisions. So we're going to try and get through all these points as quickly as possible so we can get to your questions and have a great conversation around how you can create more conversational and contextual content that truly ignites buyer relationships. So to kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to Dana, who's going to get into how you can better understand your target buyers.
Thanks, Alicia. So I think that's a great setup for where we are at today, right? I mean, you know, we're hearing so much about how content is missing the mark, how it's too broad, how it's not converting people. And the reason is because we're missing this context. And one of the ways that we can bring the right context to our content is to get to know our buyers. And for the purpose of this presentation, it's essentially their dating profile, right? How do we get to know who they are and how to reach them with the right content? So if audience is key to understanding or creating the right type of content and bringing the right context to our content, what does that mean from a persona standpoint? So we often get asked, do I need to have personas? Is it necessary in order to create the right kind of content? The short and simple answer is yes. It is absolutely necessary to create the right kind of content. The reality is, though, it doesn't have to be this big, long, cumbersome research project that we stop everything we're doing to try and learn who our buyers are. And we'll talk a little bit about the different ways to approach personas in a minute. But at a high level, we have to understand who our buyers are. We need to document who they are, and we need to get it in a place where everybody can see it. Because without that, we're constantly creating the wrong type of content or the right messaging within our content that's truly going to drive somebody through the buyer's journey. At a high level, we need to understand who they are, what are those titles, what are those behaviors, what are the pain points that they're feeling, and if we can get to it, you know, what type of content are you consuming, where are you going to get content, and then that is going to help us understand where we can add value to their lives. Without that, that context is going to be missing within your content. So in a persona, there's a couple ways that we can approach these projects. So there is the more in-depth, what I would call research-based persona project. In a project like this, you're going to do some research. Usually we recommend that it's, you would interview your internal subject matter experts. You would interview some customers or clients if you can. If you can get to people who are no longer clients with you, that adds a really great value to the personas. And then the big piece is going to come from doing either online surveys or phone interviews with prospects. Because those are the people you're trying to reach. So those are the people you're not doing business with now. So at the end of the day, those are the people we want to gather the insights from. And then what you do is we grab all of that information and we pull it into a persona template like you're seeing here. So the idea being is that we've gathered information from all different avenues and we're coming together to consolidate to create our personas. Now, often what we find is that we engage with clients who actually know who their buyers are really well. There are so many internal subject matter experts in there. There's just a wealth of information internally that we can get pretty darn close to a persona without the external research. The piece of which you're missing there is the field checking, right? The gut check. Is this really what people are thinking versus what we think internally? And that information can often be done in forums and conversations later on based on behaviors in terms of what kind of content is working, is what not. So don't feel that this is an all or nothing project. Personas are living and breathing, and you can start internally with what you know and field check it on the outside if you don't have the time or the budget or the resources to do the research up front. The bottom line here is, though, you have to engage in some sort of persona project. You have to identify who your buyers are, or that piece, that contextual piece that we're talking about being so important is going to be missing from your content. So with that, I'm going to hand it back off to Alicia so that she can talk about messaging, which is equally important in this process.
Thanks so much, Dana. And I think you really illustrated well that the importance of getting that that foundational information, and that's what I really consider personas. It's the foundation for your content, for the formats you decide to move forward with, the topics that you focus on. But I feel like the one thing that consistently is consistently gone from the equation, when we're talking about content creation and campaign design, is messaging. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the role that messaging plays, how it advances that contextual content that we're trying to create. So we can get away from these lame, bash and blast messages and these pickup lines, so to speak, and find truly meaningful ways to not only engage with our buyers, but inform them and empower them as well. So we consider buyer-focused messaging the missing link in content creation and activation. So in essence, we're taking that foundational persona information that Dana was just talking about, those buyer roles, their day-to-day goals and requirements, how they measure success, their challenges and pain points, all of those nuggets of insight and information. We're combining that with our brand value proposition, but also, demand type, where we fall in our respective industry. And that can vary from business to business, right? If you're in, say, point of sale technology, you're in a more established marketplace. So you're going to need to find new ways or different ways to differentiate because there are so many players there. Whereas, if you're in a newer or more innovative marketplace, or you're trying to own a particular market or industry, that's a completely different demand type, and there are different requirements there. So we're taking all that information, we're combining it, we're looking for trends, we're looking for patterns, we're looking for correlations, and we're really trying to find ways that we can communicate and help our buyer along their researching and decision-making journey. So this slide kind of gives you a high-level view of what that may look like. And just a quick note for our attendees, we actually have a guide that we're including with this presentation that you can download. This is what these images are extracted from. So you can actually walk through what the messaging process is like for basically a fictional tech company. So this here shows a snapshot of just a few of the buyer stages, and your number of buyer stages will vary. Some follow a standard 3-stage buyer process, whereas others have 5 or 6. It really depends on where your company is. But with each stage, there are general messaging tasks and general messaging goals. So if you're trying to educate buyers about a particular challenge or disruption or business problem, and you're trying to loosen the status quo, your messaging needs for that particular stage is going to be vastly different than the next stage when at that point your buyer's kind of looking for validation or reasons to commit to change or move forward with researching a solution. So, that's a particular component of the messaging process. It's a little more in depth, but it's extremely important because it really guides not only the messaging and the execution of one content asset, but the entire messaging process for a comprehensive content campaign. And just to show you what we mean, buyer-focused messaging can be operationalized and applied to several areas of your business. It can be for content and campaign design, whether it's for onboarding or nurturing programs, or even competitor displacement campaigns. Because if you have a target buyer who is already using a solution, they have completely different information needs than someone who is relatively new to this space, right? So you have to kind of navigate those nuances and the differences between those two different buyers. In addition, you can use these messaging points to inform and empower current users, even employees, partners, sales reps, and in a way that creates full transparency, right? When your entire organization understands the mindset, the concerns, and the information needs of your buyers at each of these stages, they're better equipped to have relevant conversations with them at any point in time. I want to touch a little bit more on the role that sales teams and sales reps play later on, but this really shows and really helps create that alignment that so many people are talking about. And finally, your messaging can inform other forms of thought leadership. If you're big into blogging, if you want to create commentary-driven articles, or even when you find and engage influencers, right? If you understand your buyer's information needs and requirements, you can better drill down into this vast ecosystem of experts and thought leaders who you can use to, throw content ideas to or collaborate on a content asset. That's a whole other conversation, but this is just to show you how, in a way, buyer-focused messaging fuels your entire content and marketing ecosystem. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it back over to you, Dana, so she can dive deeper into, once we have this messaging in place, how do we take it to that next level? How do we further customize those content experiences?
Thanks, Alicia. So, as Alicia pointed out with this, the messaging is really this middle layer that we often see missed. And at the end of the day, it's really needed to get to the right kind of content. Without it, our content is just not strong and is not going to be enticing to our readers, and is ultimately not going to do what we need it to do on the conversion end. So if we've laid that foundation, if we've done the messaging, we've done the personas, then we can really get to creating the right kind of content. And what we know right now is that, ABM approaches, so account-based marketing, personalized content, all of these things are driving a better experience when it comes to our content. And so when it comes to content creation, it's important to view content in a progression. And I think often we don't, right? We've done our personas, we've done our messaging, and then we just start creating content with little or no thought given to what's the progression of the content. And when I say progression, not the fact that I'm just going to send one email out and another one out with a new piece of content, but how is the content shifting in messaging, still driving back up to our core messages, in a way that's going to progress somebody through the funnel? So, the buyer's journey is a relationship, and it needs to be nurtured. And the content we create needs to support that journey. And so, we use this slide a lot. It's probably one of our favorite frameworks that comes out of Serious Decisions, because it really shows you, very simply, how the content needs to be created in order to drive somebody through a buyer's journey. And whether you have all of these steps or you have just a couple, what it's showing you is how content needs to progress and how that messaging needs to progress and how those narrative elements need to progress. So you're going to get this deck afterwards. Take a look at this. We find that this slide alone is really useful when trying to figure out how I create content and how, especially when it's going to be used to nurture. So the other part of it doesn't just need to be nurtured. Our buyer's journey needs to be customized now. As I mentioned, ABM is probably the hottest word in content marketing and marketing overall these days. Everybody wants to do account-based marketing, but what does that mean? At its core, it's really about customization, customizing your content, customizing your messaging, customizing your emails towards the buyer. And when we get to an ABM approach, it's to a really targeted buyer, right? At the end of the day, it's just getting more targeted and more segmented with who we're trying to reach. But if we haven't customized that experience for them, we're all kind of wasting our time. Just picking out the people we want to reach is not enough. We've got to make sure that it's pulling through to our content. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ABM and personalized content. We can also reversion content. And I'm going to talk about using content and reversioning our existing to reach a new vertical, to reach a new prospect, but using existing content I have and just putting a new spin on it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we can customize content distribution channels to even enhance the experience a little bit more. All right. So I'm sure throughout this week, there's lots of webinars. There's a few that relate to ABM. You're going to see a lot of models. And when you look through the stuff, most of it comes down to some sort of tiered approach to account-based marketing. And there's different levels of account-based marketing that we can do. And most ABM companies will recommend some sort of tiered approach where at the high level, we're getting very personalized, and at the bottom level, we're personalized, but maybe not as intricate as we've seen at the top. So let's talk through this slightly. So at the very top level, most ABM approaches are recommending that we get really highly personalized. So what does that mean? I've seen it so much to a point where they're customizing the content and putting the prospect's logo on that ebook, on that white paper, on that infographic, on that interactive experience. So if I'm going after customer A or company A, their logo is actually appearing on that ebook. And when I send it out to them in the email, hello, Joe, thank you for there. We know all about company A, and look, we've got content designed right for you. So this experience is getting highly personal. Obviously, you're all sitting there as marketers going, yes, that's not doable. How do I create hundreds of ebooks with logos? So that's why this is at the top tier. It's going to be maybe 20 of those targets that you've identified that are in your wheelhouse, and I'm going to customize that content and the experience for them. And I'm going to put their logos on their content, their ebook, their white papers, etc. So when we get down to this middle layer, maybe this is 50, maybe it's 100. It's going to be a little bit more less personalized, but it's still going to feel pretty personalized. So maybe I can't do logos on every ebook, but maybe I can do it in an email blast. Maybe I can just tweak the copy in the email, but the content stays the same. Maybe some of the call-outs I can personalize in the experience, but overall think of this as kind of that mid-level experience. So taking that really high one I've really personalized and bring it back a level. So it still feels like you know me, and I've given it some level of personalization with my company, but I'm not going all out. Again, these have to actually be actionable for you guys. And then at the bottom level, this is where we're just customizing by industry or company size. So maybe I'm going to run a campaign to the financial vertical or to the manufacturing vertical. So I'm customizing that content. And we're going to show you an example of that specifically coming up here. But the overall idea here with account-based marketing is I have to bring it into my content and into those content experiences. So we know, and we were doing this before account-based marketing became the buzzword, but the idea is it's about making, we did all of that messaging. We know who our personas are now. So why are we creating content that's so broad level it doesn't speak to them? So the idea of account-based marketing, even at this base level, is really just about making sure that we know our buyer and pulling it through the content we create. And when we do that even at this base level, we're doing some variation of account-based marketing. All right, so what does this mean in our net new content creation? So when it comes to net new content creation, so let's say at that base level, I'm running a campaign. So I know my personas. Let's say I'm going to an IT person. And let's say that we've identified that financial companies are really important to me at the moment. We're seeing a lot of traction there. So that means, when I'm creating net new content, I'm not going to create that broad general ebook or infographic. I'm actually going to create an asset that was actually geared not only for my persona of IT person, but customized to the financial industry. And so that means I'm looking for stats that's relevant to them. I'm looking for information that's actually going to speak to them. So this piece of content that we're showing up here is actually one that we created for the financial space that we geared just towards financial marketers. And so the point is that this probably isn't going to be reversionable or repurposed very well because it was highly focused on the financial space. So when you think about this content, it's because we're big advocates for reversioning, repurposing, modularizing content, and I'll show you the idea of reversioning later. This one specifically was about creating a net new piece that really spoke to financial marketers. So it's personalized, and we see the results are drastically different in that group of people specifically. Now, we're getting to the idea of reversioning and repersonalizing content or personalized content. So this is where we're using existing content. We all have existing content. And so let's say I'm sitting there and today I'm like, hey, it'd be great if I can run a campaign to manufacturers. What content do I have existing that I can use? And you start looking through your library and go, hey, these pieces are really relevant across all of our verticals. But can I put a spin on it really easily without a lot of work that all of a sudden it makes it look like I created it for them? And so this example we're showing here again is that same nurture we created for the financial side is we had an ebook called the Real-Time Buyer-Focused Content Marketing Handbook. And how can I make it relevant to the financial space so they feel like this is something that was created just for them? And it's really as simple as changing out the images. We did not even change out all the images, just the cover. We changed the title slightly. We changed the intro and just looked at the call-outs and made sure there was nothing else we could weave in really simply to make to make it feel like it was created for them. So at the end of the day, we took something, our design team probably spent an hour's worth of work on something that obviously takes a lot more time to create. And look, all of a sudden we have a second piece of content and it's geared for an industry. So we brought in a level of personalization for them. Again, this is at that base level, but we were able to really take it there. Now, if I were to take this asset and push it up to that really high level of an account-based marketing approach, I can really easily put a logo on there now, and all of a sudden I have a piece that's customized for the vertical I'm in and now customized for the actual account that I'm trying to reach. So again, it's meant to be simple steps around content, but allowing us to really take the content I need and bring that personalization side in there, that's really going to help you get the conversions you need with the content you're creating. And this is just an example of how you can pull out a call out. So, this call out was the original version. Here, we made the call out customized specifically for the financials. So again, a really simple switch. It's a switch out of a sentence versus creating a whole new asset for a vertical. So outside of just bringing context in this customization or personalized and ABM approach, whatever we want to call it, to our actual content, we can bring this experience in the way in which we're delivering content. So how do I customize and personalize the delivery mechanism for my content? And the trend right now is content hubs, microsites, all of these different ways to have a base point and a way to as the home spot, let's say, for our content. And so we're seeing a lot of customized content hubs and microsites. So can I create a hub for my content that's really focused around that buyer, that company? You could literally have a hub that is just for company A, and then you can duplicate it. And that way it's the same set, but I'm driving everybody from one organization to one hub so they feel like that experience was really customized for them. The same goes with microsites. The one on the right here is, again, part of that campaign we've been talking about. It's financial based, so it's a microsite where all of the content lives and where there, everything there is financial related. I can easily duplicate this microsite, switch out the images, switch out my links to my content, and make it more general, or I can take it to a manufacturing vertical, or I can take it to a healthcare vertical. So I've got a foundation laid here, and I'm allowed to really personalize an experience with not a lot of work. And that's where we're going to start to see the traction in the improvement in our campaigns, in our marketing efforts in terms of how we get people to get to the content we're trying to get them to. The idea of retargeting and more intimate channels, direct mail is hot right now. Right, and this was something that we kind of saw trend down a while ago, and everyone said, "Oh, nobody's using direct mail anymore." But this idea of taking content, I think we sometimes get in this mindset that content is white papers, it's ebooks, it's an infographic. But content is anything that's helping to deliver that message that I need to get them to move through the buyer's journey. So is there a way to deliver something in a piece of direct mail that's delivering that message to the persona I've identified and get that out there? And there are tools now and apps that build into your marketing automation systems that literally can trigger a direct mail. So I've gone through my nurture and I got to point X, and it's like, oh, this person is here, so now let's trigger that direct mail to go out to them. And those can be really highly personalized these days and make them feel like it was really meant for them. And that's bringing that context in that we're really looking to do to the entire experience. Retargeting ads. Let's not just drive them to our ebook. Let's drive them to the ebook that was personalized for them. You know, what does that ad look like? Let's take it down a notch. There's agencies and technology providers who can really customize the retargeting experience and can even customize the ABM approach. You can actually put in that these are the accounts I want to reach. Now serve up this ad based on where they're at in the buyer's journey. And so what we're seeing is that this personalization doesn't just, start and stop with content. It's in the way in which we're going to deliver now the content, to the buyers. And it's not just an email. I can do this with other mechanisms that you guys are all probably using parts of in your marketing tools that you're doing now. So, how do we scale this strategy? Because as we know, this personalization, this putting this context on there, it's overwhelming, it's baffling, it's too much. We all say we all got 100 things to do, this can't be done. So focus on creating evergreen content that can be easily tailored to specific and buyer industries. This doesn't mean you will never need a net new piece of content to really drive it home, but save that net new content piece for that piece that you think is ultimately going to push them through the buyer's journey. Is it a late stage piece where I'm going to talk about the ROI and the justification of why you need to be here? Is it the top of the funnel? You'll have to determine where it is, but save the net new piece for that piece that's going to really be the turning point for you in your campaign. And then the rest of the content you're creating, think evergreen, think this is a core piece that I can reversion multiple times across all of my personas, my buyers, my verticals, however I'm looking at it, and that's going to make this process much easier. Design content with modularization and reversioning in mind. I was just looking at some client work, and our team did a great job of, there's 3 assets, and they all tie together so well, and they're all very modular, and took it through a process. So the pieces will, become easier to create because the same point was being brought through 3 different experiences, but it's still progressing them through a journey, right? It's still that, top, the middle, and late kind of feeling. So think about, how do I modularize content when I can create it? Obviously, use a partner to outsource where you can content creation to take some of that burden off of you, and prioritize the turnkey opportunities. So, if there's sponsored content opportunities that I can get done really quickly and out the door, and then can I take pieces of that and break it up into the smaller pieces so that when I get those leads, I can nurture them with some of these smaller assets and everything doesn't feel net new or like this huge experience or undertaking that you have to do. All right, so with that, it's going to lead to everybody's favorite discussion, which is measurement. Do we have a future together? I love this image. The reality is that all of this is great, but if we can't prove it's working, we're all wasting our time as marketers. I've heard, this term revenue marketer is coming out, right? So we were content marketers first, and that was kind of the new, where everything was headed. But the reality is that content marketing is just marketing these days. And back to everything with marketing, if we can't show the value in it, why are we doing it? So the idea of becoming a revenue marketer and making sure that you're setting those goals up front and how am I going to show that yes, you did all this work to bring context and meaning to your content, but if I can't show how it's worked, why am I doing it? So tracking and measuring results is important. you know, this is a great picture. It might be my favorite one in the deck, right? So I swiped right when I was meant to swipe left. So what we find is if you're not setting the goals up front, if you're not going to put out what am I going to measure, when I get on the back end, it's going to be a really frustrating experience, right? What was I setting out to do? How do I know I was successful? Even just setting that goal, how will I know I'm successful when I get through this campaign? So ask yourself that question. Then when you get to your metrics, yes, I mean, we're going to gauge email clicks. We're going to gauge our form fills, the downloads, the click-throughs, all of that normal marketing stuff. There are tons of tools right now. If you're using any interactive assets or tools, that's going to give you a whole nother layer of measurement. Time spent on the asset, average time they spent on page. Did somebody zoom in on a topic, and was everybody zooming in on a particular paragraph or stat, because maybe that's an indication that I need to do a piece of content or address that later in a blog. Embedded pieces of content into other content. We can do this in interactive tools. I can embed a video and measure that engagement. I can serve up another white paper, ebook, infographic right in the experience. You know, we have a lot of experience with Uberflip and Seros. And so within those tools, we can embed other content. It gives you that whole Netflix experience. You know, Lookbook is a wonderful company to look at in terms of how they are taking that experience and getting you to the next piece of content, which just helps people get through the journey faster. But what I will tell you is there's ways to embed other content in a PDF. So this doesn't have to, it doesn't mean you have to go out tomorrow and buy 100 tools. I do think everyone should start considering it. It's where we're going. But I can create this experience and give me this other layer of measurement right in the PDF. I can embed a video. Yes, the video has to be in YouTube or it has to be on a landing page on my site, but I can embed a link in a PDF and I can leave them there, and then I can measure those clicks. So I can start to measure the engagement and the consumption of content beyond just my normal clicks. What I would say is this stuff is all important, but again, ask yourself, how am I going to measure success? And if that success for you is just to get people to take my content, if you're at the beginning of this process, that's okay too. You know, if you have no numbers to compare it against, you know, don't set yourself up for failure. Make sure that what you are going to measure is measurable. It's something you can, I would say, lather, rinse, repeat. It's something that I can measure, I can be successful at, and then I can repeat it. When we set ourselves up to fail, we end up not wanting to do this again. And we've got a lot to do here and a lot of work across the board in terms of how we're creating content and running our campaigns. Alicia, I'm going to let you jump in here on these next few slides.
All right, great. Thanks, Dana. And Dan already touched on some of these principles of being able to create these really immersive content experiences. Although it's extremely beneficial from a measurement standpoint, right? Like Dana said, you can identify and track patterns within your content. You can see what your audience is clicking on. Are they diving deep into these recommended content assets? Are they truly engaging with the content to the extent that you want them to? Because the more engaged they are, you know, the more you can say, hey, this person is truly immersed. You know, this is resonating with them. Let's find the best way to continue the conversation and follow up. So in addition to that, though, beyond a measurement standpoint, it just creates a great experience for your buyer. And at the end of the day, when we think about context, you know, we think about how we can, you know, make this a seamless and enjoyable journey and process for them. We don't want to make our buyers jump through hoops, right? So create those you may also like pages, you know, similar to what Amazon does with their follow-up emails, right? Say, okay, this is the starting point for your educational journey. If you want to continue and you want to keep learning, here are a few other assets that you can dive into. And usually the approach that we like to take is, you know, include a variety of different topics, potentially even different stages of the buyer's journey, and include a more middle stage checklist, or, you know, include a case study portfolio. That way you can look at those numbers and say, oh, we have a lot of people who are interested in these case studies. It may help you identify a more engaged audience that maybe you wouldn't have focused on otherwise. But when we're talking about content rabbit holes and, immersive content experiences. It doesn't have to be within PDS. It doesn't have to be a big design undertaking. It could just be as easy as, including CTAs within your blogs. And this is a best practice that we really live and breathe by. Because blogs are such a strong inbound channel, and a lot of your buyers go to blogs and rely on blogs to start that researching journey. They don't want it to be a dead end, and honestly, you don't want it to be a dead end either, because it may get them immersed and interested and get them to download a supplementary piece of content. And this one particular example, just to close the loop on our financial campaign that Dana has been talking about. To kick off the campaign, we created a blog. Even though we'll have some inbound traffic, we try to, create a topic that appealed to a wider audience. It was all about how, financial brands or fintech brands were embracing some of these new content trends and, how it helps them better engage buyers. The CTA was more tailored, though. If you want to learn more about, fintech content marketing trends, if you want to get a more focused experience, click here. So if people wanted to, stop their journey, that was perfectly fine, but we were able to draw in that more focused audience that we wanted to engage to that next step. And, like we were talking about ABM and targeting the right accounts, those subtle touches make such a big difference. And since we're talking about continuing the conversation and, kind of using metrics and, lead insights or buyer insights to continue the conversation, obviously in this case, sales can be your ultimate wingman, right? They continue that conversation. Once you say, hey, this person is engaged, I need you to follow up, they take it from there. They continue that journey with them. So frankly, you want to make sure that they're empowered and they have all the information they need to have those conversations, whether it's through email or social media or, of course, phone. So, some things, and these assets can be largely modular, right, or repurposed from your core assets that you're promoting. We create sales cheat sheets or, content summaries or checklists. You can even create internal campaign microsites where they have a central hub to house all the content from the campaign. That way, if they get a lead to follow up on and they see that engagement data or what they've downloaded, they can open that piece of content and get a full understanding of what the buyer has gone through thus far or what they've learned thus far. That way, when they do their follow up, it's contextual, right? It's relevant and it's a seamless connection to what they've already been learning about or thinking about. There's nothing worse than having having a cold email is top of the tier, but there's nothing worse than a salesperson trying to have a conversation with you and they don't understand what you know already. Or you have to say, yeah, I already know that, or I already did that. You want to feel like they understand everything that you've been through thus far. In addition to that, you want to make sure that they can bring value to the conversation, right? Beyond those, oh, did you know, this is what's happening in the industry, or that more trend-based insight. Give them recommended resources that they can share with buyers during their conversation. Give them more fodder to, continue that relationship, because if they're able to bring that relationship to the next step, sure, your buyer may not always be ready to make a decision in that moment, but you want to make sure that you're top of mind when they're ready to make that decision or ready to have that buying conversation. So those are just some quick tactics, and again, those pieces can be repurposed and modularized from that core content that we've already created. So in a way, it kind of closes the loop on this entire experience and this entire buyer relationship. So with that, I want to pass it back over to Dana.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I think that slide and that discussion you just had might be one of the most important from the entire webinar that we've done today. More and more we're seeing the value of marketing working closer with sales and just the cohesiveness and the stronger the content and the messaging and everything comes out of it when you work together. And they're on the same team. They want the same thing you guys do. And so the more you can figure that out, the better off everybody is in this process. So, that brings us to the end here, and there's just some few takeaways that we want to do. So to stay with the theme of how to get to happily ever after. So to recap some points that we made today is, personas are a must. I know that some people don't want to hear that. Don't let them overwhelm you. Don't think it has to be this big thing, because it doesn't. But without it, it's detrimental to everything that you're doing. And so ask yourself the questions. Even once you've done personas, if you're going to create the next piece of content or that campaign, who is this being created for? Who am I trying to reach? You would be amazed at how many times nobody's thought about that question. Even internally, sometimes we're creating content and we get really excited about an idea. And you're sitting there going, and you have to take a step back and go, but wait a second. Who are we trying to reach? Why are we doing this? And why is there pain point, and how is this going to speak to them? And if it's persona A, why does this resonate with them? And pull up that persona, pull up the information you have, whatever it is, and go, yes, this fits. This is in line. This is going to resonate. Get personal with your messaging and content. Whether you're calling it ABM, whether you are just creating content, understand that any level of personalization you bring to the table is going to bring that context to your content, right? It's going to help it resonate with your buyer. So get personal as much as you can in all of the content you create, in all of the different experiences you create marketing. Take real actions towards an ABM approach. The reality is this is where it's going. I saw some staggering stats recently that basically say, by next year, there's not going to be one company who's not doing this, right? So I know it's not that dramatic, but that's the way the stats are making it sound. The idea being that it really just comes back to this idea of personalization and customization, because there's so much noise out there with that content fatigue, the content overload that Alicia was talking about, content burnout, whatever you want to call it. You have to get through the noise. And the way to get through the noise is to personalize and customize that content and target the buyers that you want to reach. And of course, measurement is the icing on the wedding cake. So all of this is not worth our time if you're not going to measure it and you're not going to take a look at what those results are and how you can improve on it and make it better. So set those goals, however small they are, measure your success, and then repeat it. So with that, I think we're done. I'm going to pass it back over to Claudia.
Thank you, ladies. That was terrific, and I do have to agree. Personalization and messaging and content is definitely important. Of course, you sparked some great questions today. But before we get to that, I'd like to remind you again to please share your thoughts and feedback in our survey before logging off today. You can do so by clicking the survey icon, which you can see circled here on the bottom of your screen at any time. You can also wait until the close of the session, at which time the survey will automatically launch. Okay, so let's get into some questions. All right, we have one here. So if I'm considering developing my own buyer personas, where is the best place to start?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Claudia. So I think that we underestimate the value or the information, I should say, that is in our internal organizations. So, I would advocate that you start with your internal people. So that could mean salespeople. I think, Alicia talked a lot about how to make sales your wingman. This is a really good place to start, because they're talking to your customers day in and day out, prospects day in and day out. This is what they do. So you'd be amazed at what they know, and not just the high-level ones, right? Or your executives. What about the people who are doing this day in and day out, the ones in the field? Anybody who's in field marketing, product marketing, anybody with contact or has a good grasp on your audiences are good to tap into, and start with just doing some interviews with them and gathering the information and hear what they have to say. And then, in today's day and age, everything can be found on the web. You would be amazed the information you could find about your buyers online. So it sounds so simple, but do a search. about your target audiences. See what you can come up with. Analysts may have already studied it. You might be able to access a report. It may be a little outdated, but the reality is it gives you a base point. So 9 out of 10 times we find a lot of organizations to get 90% of the way there with what they know internally and through the research they do to shape up their persona. So I recommend you start with your internal knowledge.
Awesome. Okay, we have a second question from one of our viewers. Can you suggest any turnkey strategies for creating vertical-specific microsites or hubs?
I can take this, Claudia. I guess the first important question, the attendee needs to ask themselves is, what kind of experience do they want to create for their buyers? Do they prioritize, having a really great mobile experience? Do they want interactivity? Do they want it to be a standalone microsite, or do they want it to be part of their own website experience? Those are just a few of the foundational questions I think, marketers need to ask before they start to plan things out and sketch things out. If they're really looking for something, a lot of bells and whistles or really immersive and cool and cutting edge, if you have a web development team, great. If not, this may be something that you want to prioritize and put money towards for outsourcing, getting a really good coder, someone who knows how to put together a good experience like that. If not, there are more turnkey ways to create a similar experience. For example, Uberflip can create a really great hub experience, so all of your assets are available, and you can see the whole picture of your content library, and you can easily sift through those different assets. You also can create basically a website toolkit, connected to your home site. Have a unified landing page that doesn't just have one asset, it has all assets, and it can be focused on a particular topic or, aligned with our conversation today, a particular industry, right? You can customize it however you need. And then once they, submit their information into the form, make all of those assets available. Don't make them jump through hoops if they want to, read all 4 or all 5 assets. Make them fill it out once, and then that's it. Another similar experience is you can do some really interesting things with email. You can have a standard nurture email and just say, hey, this is our resource center just for you. That way there's a personalization element, and it's all they really need. They see the email, there are seamless links to all those content assets, and if they're already in your database, make those instant downloads. If not, again, make them just fill out their form once and give them access to all of them. Those are just some quick ways to get started, but I will say if you take the time and money to invest in a microsite experience, for example, we did that with our FinTech campaign. To Dana's point, like she said earlier, it's something that can easily be copied and reused in the future. You can add new images, you can update the copy, but if you have that foundational web infrastructure there, that's something that you can reuse in the future. So I would say if you want to do more of these toolkits and microsites, that's an investment worth making.
Great. Thank you, Alicia. And here's another great question. Are there, or what are the content formats that lend themselves best for reversioning and or modularization?
I can take that one too, Claudia, and then I can have Dana pop in if I missed anything. But usually when we think about content modularization, it can be done in 2 different ways, from the top down or from the bottom up. And I think we actually included our modular content guide or ebook with this presentation, so I encourage everyone to check that out. Because again, it really depends on the company's goals. We try to develop content with modularity in mind, so designing a foundational asset, like an ebook or even a white paper, with the intent of eventually breaking it down or reusing it somehow. So let's use ebooks as an example. Trying to include graphic callouts that have relevant industry stats. Incorporating sidebars that include use cases or best practices. Because when you create that really foundational piece that covers, a big industry topic or, trend that's happening, you can break those pieces down, reuse them as is, so reuse those call-outs as social images, or pull out the checklist sidebar and reuse it as its own standalone checklist. So that's usually what we think of when we think of modular content or content reuse. Ebooks are usually the biggest low-hanging fruit, but again, there are ways to combine assets like infographics or social images, for example, and combining it with executive briefs. There's really no quote-unquote, I think, rule to the process, but that's usually what we go through. As far as reversioning, I don't really see any boundaries in terms of the best formats, but again, it's usually checklists, it's ebooks, white papers. Things like infographics can be a little tricky, usually because sometimes you have custom graphics in there. But if you design them properly and plan them out properly, you can usually do it pretty seamlessly. But those are usually the most common challenges. So again, if you're new to the whole process, I would start with those foundational pieces like ebooks, white papers, briefs, and then you can always experiment as you continue to test and learn. Dana, is there anything I missed there?
No, I think you covered it all.
Great, that's very interesting. And here we have another. Campaign and content measuring goals. Campaign and content measurement gets overwhelming fast. Any advice on how to keep from getting overwhelmed?
Yeah, I agree. It really does. And I think, my advice there is, and I think I talked about it a little bit before, is really to set realistic goals. And I know that's hard because sometimes we don't know what's realistic to expect. But if you're running a campaign and you're running it to 10,000 people, say, I want 5 meetings out of it. I know that sounds so simple, but the goal is, that's my goal, is to get them to progress to the nurture. Or I want them to, I want at least 50 people to take 3 of the touches. Those numbers sound small, but when you go, I want 50% of the people to click on my email or 20%, and these numbers seem so big, you look at it and you go, okay, none of this is working, I failed, and then it's harder to start next time. So when you don't know what to expect, you have no numbers to compare to, start small. The other thing is, goals don't always have to be about the clicks and the conversions and meetings. I guess that's what we're all measured on. That leads to stuff. But let's say you're trying something new. Let's say we embedded a social link in an ebook. Maybe my goal is that 5 people shared that ebook and drove 5 other people to my landing page. So those are somewhat different goals, but they still come back to conversion at the end of the day, and they help you start to measure these new tactics that you might be introducing into your content marketing efforts. So think small, think repeatable, and just don't be too hard on yourself. I would say be light on yourself when it comes to this stuff. If you've set the goal, that's half the battle, right? Just getting there and saying, hey, this is what I'm setting out to accomplish, and then going back and seeing if I did it. And the other thing I would just add to that is try and watch your stuff real time. I think too many people press play and let the campaign run, and they aren't watching what it's doing. And, if an email went out this week and it was great, and then touch 2 was awful, take a quick look and go, what did I do differently in touch 1 that I didn't do 2? Was the subject line more catchy? Was it not? And make changes to number 3 before you get there, if you can. So don't think of this as, and some people, if you have an ongoing nurture where new people are constantly going in, don't let it run for 3 months before you make changes. If one email send goes out and it's awful, go back through it. Try and figure out what went wrong and try new things. This is not rocket science. At the end of the day, a lot of time it's just trial and error. We got to try something, see if it works, and if it doesn't, try this. It's never coming out, like every send is different, every piece of content is different. As much as it's like to say this one's going to perform just as good, sometimes we got to take a close look at why this one did and try and apply it forward.
Thanks, Dana. That's all the time we have for questions today. Thanks again to Content for Demand's Dana Harder and Alicia Esposito for sharing such great insights. And thank you to all our attendees for taking the time to join us today. A reminder that today's webinar will be available on demand, so you can access it at any time and share it with your peers and colleagues. Make sure you stay tuned for our final session of the Strategy and Planning series featuring Domo later today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's titled Key Strategies to Turn Insights into Action in 2017, How B2B Organizations Can Activate the Marketing Data They Need to Drive Conversions and Conversations. We hope to see you there. Thanks again and enjoy your day.